Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So I think we have uh, myself, Muhammad Farouk, and we have Mr. Lebo, who's joining in the show today. So before I think we go for a detailed introduction, I think we can wait for another 2 minutes. If that's okay, I think few more people are joining in. What do you think, Lebo?
Not a problem, Mohammed. 2 minutes won't be a problem at all. You can wait for it.
Yeah, so just I'm looking at my stopwatch, so I'll look at another 2 minutes exactly, 120 seconds, then we can get going.
Find out.
Yeah, and yeah, so I can see more people joining in, so it would be good to have people right from the beginning. So I think we are good to go. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So it's a real pleasure meeting you, and welcome to the webinar on the risk management and how this is going to be helping us in terms of improving the governance. And specifically, Lebo would be taking us through the African continent as a context today, right? So my name is Muhammad Farouk. So I live in the UK, but currently, I am joining in from Doha, Qatar, because I'm just traveling. So, very good to see you all. So, before I get going and start talking about myself, I would say, we have Lebo who's joining the call. Thank you very much for coming in, Lebo. So who is an expert in risk management as a practice. So I was quite excited when I met him for the first time, and I've asked him, what else are you specialized in? And he said, you know what, Farouk, so the only thing I do is risk management. You don't get to see a lot of people talking this language, even when you talk about the corporate world where people are specialized in multiple areas. But Lebo, that was an exciting answer, and that was really special. So we don't get to see so many people talking on this on these lines. So welcome to the show, and so I would leave the floor to you to have a quick introduction. It would be great for us to know a bit more about you in detail before we get going. Yeah. Yes, Lebo.
Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking time to be with us today. Basically, today's presentation is for us to explore how can risk management improve governance within the context of African continent. My take would be that the world is changing in a rapid pace, but uncertainty has become a daily reality for our day-to-day lives. Think about the coronavirus crisis. We have the economic conflict and stricter environmental requirements. The manner in which the government and the public sector organizations deal with these uncertainties is what will determine the efficacy and the success of our risk management practice as a continent. At the moment, uncertainties have a couple of elements. Two, the variety of strain and uncertain effect is either positive or negative. However, both elements can have either a positive or a negative. So going forward, we will be discussing how can risk management improve governance within the continent, and how can it contribute towards the economic development within the continent. Everyone, thank you again for joining us in this meeting. I'm welcome to be and risk management specialist. I specialize in ISO 1000 standard. And we are working from South Africa under the company The Food Solutions. Thank you very much for taking time and being with us today. Mohammed, we will be discussing government. Even we will be taking from government and standard because I want us to focus entirely on ISO 1000 standard.
Okay, yeah. So Lebo, thank you very much for the introduction. And just about myself, I work for Excelledia, and we are a company specialized in business performance management. And so about myself, so I've been doing it for a while in terms of specialized a bit on digital transformation, and currently learning a bit more detailed on how artificial intelligence can help organizations to win their goals in better, and how can they scale their businesses as well. So I've been doing a lot of consulting projects as well in the space of ISO standards, and more into the business performance side of the business. So that's a brief about me. And so Lebo, before we get started, so we always talk about the risk management, and risk management is a process which is considered as technical in some region, and which is considered as part of the business in some region, and which is also considered as part of only for the sake of getting the standards and certification. So depending on the culture, depending on the size and shape of the organization, and depending on the region, the perception varies accordingly, in different parts of the world. So I would like to start the question. I would like to start the session with the question, how is it in a typical, how is it risk management, perceived in African context, or in Africa as a continent? Is people really taking decisions on businesses using the risk management as a practice? Or is it for the sake of having a certification in place? Or is it really looked at it as an organizational or business performance management tool? Or what's the context in general? What do you see? That we're very keen to understand.
My observation, Farouk, would be that in most cases, risk management is seen as a business performance and management tool. However, risk management is mostly isolated. We doing risk in an isolation space. We are not.
Yeah, Lebo, if you can share, slide, change the slide, and they may not be liking to see my face a long time. So yeah, so that's good. Yeah, so
yeah. My take with my observation at the moment within the African context, risk management is widely explained. However, the implementation, I'd say, is not as adequate as it should be in line with the ISO standard. Because as it stands, risk management is conducted in isolation. We do our day-to-day job, and we do risk management later. For decision making at this stage, risk management is not considered in decision making within the African space. We take decisions and we come back to say, this was risky. How can we deal with it? We're not saying we're taking this decision and what are the risk events that can transpire through this decision.
Okay, that's exciting. So that pushes me to my next question, basically. So why is it not risk considered as part of the business as usual? So is it because it's another ISO standard, so it has to be kept as another management systems which is kind of not related to the business as usual, or it becomes an administration burden after some time? So for any organization, so are people managing, or is organizations managing risk management? Let's say take an example of ISO 31000 risk management practice. is it really managed as one as business as usual and another one as risk management, ISO standard or ISO 31000 risk management system? So, or is it really one, like in all the matured organization does? It's like one business management system, and the 31000 is being utilized as an efficient tool in order to have informed decision making. So is that the case? Or, or if that's not the case, like what you said, why is it that way?
In some organizations, that's the case. In some organizations, that's not the case, depending on the maturity of the implementation. For organizations that's not the case, you'll find that risk management is in isolation. It is done as a separate exercise where you say there's management and there's ISO 31000 standard on the side. We are not integrating it with the business as usual processes on our day-to-day business as usual processes. That's where we should be integrating our risk management strategies. And if you can see, Mohammed, international players and first world governments, they are all doing it. They are always ahead. That's because they have taken standards to the forefront of their economic development and service delivery cases. The African continent and public sector organizations are still left behind.
Yeah. Would you like to say more about increasing efficiency and saving time and saving money? I can see saving money, and I'm quite curious to see, like as every other businessman, I'm quite curious to see, like how is it going to help me saving money? So I know saving time would definitely help me to save money, but so would you like to talk a bit more about it?
Yeah, I'll take the public sector organizations in particular, because when funds are being lost within the public sector, the economy as a whole is not going to be effective. So I'll always refer to public sector. In this case, we're talking about saving money. We have public sector, we have fund allocations, we have where we allocate funds for projects, we allocate funds for certain programs, and we allocate funds for particular projects and job creation mandate. So if I say to you today, Farouk, I have 50 million rand budget for you to create for me employment, and you come back to me and you say, Lebo, no, I do not have any method to create employment for you. Why do I need to give you that 50 million if you cannot utilize it for me? So those are the kind of things that we are constantly experiencing within our government. So with risk management, we are going to be able to conduct our monitoring and evaluation to say, okay, we've given you 50 million, Farouk. What have you done with the 50 million, and what is it that you can bring forward to say, this is how much I've spent on the 50 million, and this was what I was spending it on. So with our government, it's difficult to actually monitor the financial systems because there's a lack of risk management. What we are doing currently is we are using audit management system as a risk management practice or process. What we're doing is we consider our processes done, and then we wait for the audit process to come and say, here you made a mistake. This you shouldn't have done. This was a risky event. So we need to integrate risk management from an operation processes before we can actually get to the auditing process.
Okay, that's interesting. So so we're also talking about how risk management is ensuring the governance side of things. Just to add on to what you said, I was talking to somebody yesterday, who came to the office, and he said, I'm working on a project with the United Nations and mostly in Somalia. And what he said was that, like $100 million has been given to a project, and how can we have efficient processes in place? So my first question was, what are the current process portfolio, and what are the available controls, which are there? So risk management is also about having very strong controls in place and monitoring them proactively rather than waiting for them to fail, and understanding it based on a sample during an audit So rather than doing it, I would say it has to be more of a proactive approach where risk management, while doing the risk management, the proactive control monitoring system would also ensure you to have a stronger governance in practice. Would you agree, or what do you think about that?
I agree with you, Mohammed. I agree entirely because without a risk management policy or strategy in place, we have nothing guiding us and guiding our effort. So it's impossible, or should I say, it's sometimes impossible for me and for any other person to monitor something that they are not guided on. So if we have a risk management policy and a risk management strategy that's there to guide our operations through and through the processing, we will have risk management integrated within the context of application of the enterprise. Because if we can check, for now, risk management is in isolation. We wait, and everything happens. But if we have risk management integrated at an enterprise level, it is when that we will have risk management adequately and effectively working for our organization.
Yeah, I would say my thoughts would be to do that integration. The first thing you need to do is that, you need to create a business process portfolio, the list of your key processes and the process interactions. You need to make sure that all your controls are added against it by having a strong control library. And one thing you have to make sure that, the controls are proactively monitored, at least, in three phases or three stages. One is when you're connecting this, risk management. One is you're connecting your processes to your controls for the first time. And second time when you're doing a risk assessment. And the third time when you're doing your control testing while doing your auditing. So it has to be a constant circle of excellence. So, right. So, like we were talking about, so this is very, very important. So would you like to talk about a bit more about the learnings as well, like you've mentioning on the slides?
Learning present, the literature that's available on risk management.
Yeah.
The literature I'm referring to the policies that are there currently to make sure that risk management is aligned to our objectives. We take that governments that makes risk management core to their economic development as we see a strong return. Look at Australia, look at England, there's France, there's Poland. Those are the governments that are continually in the forefront of economic development.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. And how is your thoughts on, rather than having a direct risk management, identifying the risk register, what's your thoughts on, identifying all your risk against your organizational objectives? So, I would say, like what you rightly said, your risk management has to be against your organizational objectives and goals set, rather than just having them against the, isolated practice. What's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that would be for us to be able to manage risk at an enterprise level, we need to have created a radar for our risks. When we create a radar, we're creating something that's going to guide us along the way of doing our business, doing the business processing. Because if you can check, currently we are working on risk management as an isolation. That is what makes it difficult for us to mend and monitor our risk registers. We do not have adequate risk registers that are in compliance with what we are doing within the company. We do things as we please, everybody does as they want. So what is happening within the ISO standard is we have the way that we describe risks. There's a risk description and there's a way that you should describe it. So if you do not know how to describe risk, if you do not know how to use the risk register, it's inadequate for you to say you're gonna be and have an effective risk management practice.
Okay, so let's take a minute to ask, something similar to the audience. Jitin, would you be able to put together the first question as a poll? So let's see what what the participants and the delegates thinks about, our first question. Jitin, would you be able to help us with the question?
Yeah, sure, sure.
So, the question to you all is that, we were talking about risk, and, Lebo was talking about managing it in an isolated manner. So, how are you managing a risk? Are you managing it, using a spreadsheets, or you're not managing it at all? Or, do you have, a risk management software in place, which is talking to your organization, or which is talking to your business well? So we would love to have your thoughts. This would give us an indication of whatever we are talking, makes some sense to you all. Yeah, so yeah, Zoom says the panelists cannot vote, so we are not voting. So yeah, so this is interesting. So 36% it says that we have no risk management in place. So there is no isolation. So there is no risk management in place. So it would be interesting to know, how would we establish a risk management, the process itself, right from identifying the context, then so right from scanning the context in the form of internal, external issues, your stakeholders, and everything around you, and then identifying the risk, then assessing them, in the form of likelihood and impact, qualitatively and quantitatively, then having the control strategy and the treatment side of things. So that's one area. So, and the 45% it says it is they're managing it through spreadsheets or Excel sheets. And good to see 18% coming out and saying that, okay, we have a risk management software. So that's so what's your thoughts on that, Lebo? How is it? Is it a typical African reflection, or is it you expecting something else?
No, I'm not expecting something else, and this is not typical at all, because we need to grow. This is a sign of growth. It's a sign of growth within the continent. If companies are now having software to run risk management, that means we are going the right direction. However, we need to make sure that it's standardized and integrated in an everyday, day-to-day operation.
Yeah, and would you like to, take us through a bit more about the enterprise risk management evaluation framework, and what's your thoughts on that? Like what you've mentioned on the slides.
The enterprise risk management evaluation framework, that would be for Standard and Poor rating agency. That is very key to economic development, because if you can check with African continent, our countries are dependent somehow on funding from other countries. So if we were dependent on international companies for funding, international companies will have their requirements and specifications for us to comply with. They might not say, Farouk, you need to comply with 1 and 2, but it's there. It's a requirement. If the process requires that I get funding from Excelledia Ventures at a particular time for a particular project, you're going to need to know what the project is for. But then in this case, we have the S&P rating our countries continentally. We have Moody's and we have other rating agencies. The most important thing is to understand that the risk management standard is one of the requirements that are stipulated within the rating agency requirement, because we need to comply with their enterprise risk management evaluation framework, so that we can be able to coordinate and structure our risk management. Once we have coordinated and structured risk management, that will automatically land us into a conforming space. And automatically, by landing us into the conforming space, we will be complying with the ISO Committee on Conformity Assessment. That's CASCO. Those are the people that does assessment on our risk management implementation across the board.
That's really informative, Lebo. And when it comes to risk management, and when it comes to risk management governance, or when it comes to the organizational governance, risk management plays its key part. So what I always think is, when I talk about governance, governance is always about two things, like you rightly said. One is a conformance, which you said, the compliance part of the business, and the other one is a performance, because this is one reason why risk management is practiced in isolation, because we are so much focused on the compliance side of things, when you're managing the risk management thing, or we are so much focused on the standardization of the processes, we literally forget why we are doing it, which is to increase the efficiency and the bottom line or the performance of the organization. So for me, governance is all about conformance plus performance put together is the real meaning of governance. Yeah. So I would let you speak about the challenges in terms of the challenges faced by the African economies. You said there's a lot of money coming in and there are plenty of projects. So what would you call as challenges, and what are they? Would you like to talk us through some of them?
From challenges perspective, I will be talking about challenges from a global and a continental view, because we find that it's not only African countries that have challenges. Every economy and every country within the globe has challenges that they are facing. Most challenge for every one of us, for every country, will be your political shift in power. The shift in political power. You know that we have political figures push different agendas to the forefront. That's a very, very, very disruptive one to the economy at this moment. That's a term risk. For every term we are faced with this challenge to say there's gonna be a new leader that's gonna come with their own agenda and pushing it to the forefront. Then
Yeah, and
the GDP.
yeah, go ahead, Lebo. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
The disruption in political power will take us and lead us back to the GDP risk, which for every economy you need to be positioned at that particular position in order for you to have a certain influence. So it's not happening for African continent. We cannot influence anything anywhere because we do not have that strong base within our GDP space. We are dependent mostly from external dependencies for funding. That's what we've been discussing earlier on the matters of the S&P and rating agencies. We are dependent on external funders for our economies to grow. It is for that reason we need to find our economies comply with our funders.
Okay, that's really informative again. So when it comes to people who are actually starting the risk management journey, because during the poll some of them said we don't have a risk management process in place. So what Lebo was explaining is more of the external challenges, which is generally captured when you're establishing a risk management process. So which is captured through something called the pestle analysis while scanning the context. So he spoke about the political, environmental, local, like legal, and so basically the social and all these angles. And also you would also look into the challenges in the form of internal issues, like your threats and your weaknesses, and like all these areas as well, right? So this is so Lebo would be talking about a bit more about the political and the economic objectives and the technological objectives. So how important are they when you're establishing your risk management framework, or when you're establishing a risk management process? Because even though you don't have much control over them, because you can't control a political scenario, right? But if it is internal or micro analysis, you can have controls. But if it is macro, which is external, it's not very easy, right? So yeah. Yes, Lebo. So what's your thoughts on that?
We should always remember, Farouk, that risk management filters through the pestle model. The pestle model, as you've just explained, is your political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental objectives. So for our government, every government has objectives, and our objectives are contextualized within the PESTEL space. So the PESTEL model should be our focus when we introducing risk management. That's where our focus should be, because we have your political objectives. We need to make sure that we chart our risk management practice alongside the political objectives. We need to make sure that we chart our risk alongside economic objectives, because we do have objectives within the political space, we do have objectives within the economic space, we have objectives within the social space. So in risk management integration will filter through from political down to the environmental space.
I think what Lebo is trying to do is exactly like the man is pushing those blocks, so so the isolated risk management practice is coming towards him, but what he's trying to do is that to connect. I could see him talking about objectives in every line, because it's important that you've got your organizational objectives, you've got your organizational goals, you've got your strategy in place. So you need to make sure that every single element you're identifying is actually having some kind of an impact against your strategic direction and organizational objectives. So otherwise, you're just simply doing a list register, not a risk register, right? So, and this list register would help you to satisfy your auditors, would help you to have your your big claims, as if I have got a certification, and but it won't really help you to have a real impact on your bottom line. So if you want to have that, so with the basic help of the strength and weaknesses as internal, but most importantly, you need to have a very strong horizon scanning to understand the dynamic political, economic, and social and environmental objective in the form of PESTEL. And those inputs would be the first level of those outputs will be the first level of inputs for any kind of risk identification. Yeah, Lebo, if you can go to the next slide, so that
Thank you very much.
Yeah, go on, Lebo. Yeah, so
thank you very much, Mohammed. As we all are aware, it is widely reported that there's a huge and unmanaged maladministration and improper conduct within the African continent. That is due to poor governance and political interference, leading to an unethical conduct. Because if we do not have a risk management integrated according to the ISO standard, it is impossible for us to be able to deal effectively with maladministration, improper conduct, or poor governance. It is always going to be reported that there's political interference and unethical conduct, of which it is something that should have long or can still be mitigated going forward for our continental development.
Yeah, so that's rightly said, and like you're always focusing on the ISO standard and ISO 31000. So ISO doesn't do any magic. So what it helps you to do is that it helps you to set the baseline, and you always have practices which is beyond and above the standards, but it helps you to set the basics for you, so that you have the base in place, you have the basics in place, and you can drive bigger and better, like once you have the basics in place, the foundation is placed. And so you were also talking about the adoption and implementation of risk management as a practice in governments. So what's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that, Mohammed. Remember, we do risk management for a sole purpose, that is to optimize our chances for success. We cannot implement risk management for us to fail. So we're implementing risk management to optimize our chances for success. In adoption and implementing risk management within government, we will be referring to, as I mentioned before, that we will be referring back to the ISO Committee on Conformity Assessment. ISO Committee on Conformity Assessment is an international conformity assessment for their rating agencies. So what is happening is, at the moment, we have promotion and maintenance of standardization and quality in accordance with the Republic of South Africa Standard Act of 2008. We will refer back to that act, the Standard Act of 2008 of South Africa. We will refer back to that act to guide us through the implementation and to enforce the implementation of a standard within the Republic of South Africa and filtering it up the continent.
I think, yeah, what Lebo is trying to tell us here is basically telling that, if you have to establish something or if you have to improve something, you need to really understand where exactly are you today, so that you know that, okay, how far do you have to travel in terms of efficiency or in terms of revenue or in terms of customer satisfaction or anything of that sort, or in terms of effective utilization of funds, which would probably, enhance the quality of life of the people in Africa when that is used in the right manner, right? So you're talking about the wider aspects of the risk management and its efficiency. I think that that forces me to put the next question in for the audience. So Jitin, would you be able to shoot the next question, so that I believe the delegates are not getting bored or the audience is not getting bored. So,
Yes.
I think there is a bit of work to do for you as well. Yeah.
Sure, sure.
And for any of you who's listening and who think, you need any assistance and help in terms of establishing or improving in terms of people, process, and technology, feel free to reach us anytime. And, I'm not talking about a commercial engagement. I'm talking about, helping you to understand where you are, what are the best practices. And, Lebo or ourselves or as a team, we would be very happy to, understand, where exactly you are, or make you understand. So this is an interesting question. If you have a risk management in place, what percentage of your business decisions are made on your risk insights or your risk assessment or your risk management results, right? So, or you're still trusting your gut feeling and experience, or are you referring some of the risk assessments as well? So it is an interesting discussion, Lebo, because I always used to ask my clients, how many of you were being called by the top management when the pandemic hit? Because if you are a strong risk management department or risk management function, if there was an emergency, you would have been called by the top management rather than calling the finance department. So, so how many of you have been called by your top management, or what percentage of your decisions are generally taken using the so-called risk management framework? And Lebo, I would pose this question for the government after the results have come in. So probably you can tell us what is it like in the government. Yeah, but yeah, let's wait for the results. Yeah, so I could see an exciting 70%, so exciting 23%, taking decisions using the insights from risk. And 23% says, no, we don't do that at all. And 15% is at 50 to 69, but that's an exciting zone. You always have started the journey. And also, 23% says we are at 25 to 50% kind of a thing. Right. So I think people who have not started, I would strongly advise them to establish a risk framework and, start working on it. But when it comes to, the 70 to 100, you can actually measure. If you're at 72, try to be at 90, right? If you're at 25, try to be at 40, like have that gradual increase. And Lebo, the question for you is that as you could not vote, so the question for you is that, how would you vote it for the government? If you were the representative of the entire African government organizations, what's your score?
I give it 1 to 25.
Come again?
Poor. I give it 1 to 25.
1 to 25. So that means they have a system in place which is kind of isolated. So they're not really exploring, taking decisions, in depth. So yeah. So that's another exciting, insight, the second side of the things. So yeah, so what else would you like to tell us, Lebo? Like, is there anything else which we should be aware of?
Mohammed, referring to standards, back to standards, I'll always refer to ISO 31000 standard because I know it's possible for risk management standard to improve the economic development outcome. Why am I concerned with the economic development outcome? Because currently our economies are not growing within the African continent. The African continent is not growing. The African countries are not growing. The African economies are not growing. It is not only due to lack of compliance with the S&P and the other economic standards that are there. It is also because of maladministration and political interference that I mentioned earlier on. If we find ourselves compliant with the S&P enterprise risk management evaluation framework, we will be in a better position to boost our investor confidence. And taking note that upon rollout of risk management into government, we will be opening access to a pool of risk management jobs. There's risk management jobs that are locked currently because of the lack of standardization and adoption of the processes that should unlock those opportunities. Opportunities within the risk management space are there, and having job created within the continent will improve our economic standing, will improve economic livelihoods of people out there.
Yeah, I've also thought of Lebo, like especially when it comes to after a very extensive risk assessment process. I've seen always the internal audit team, without conducting the audit without taking those risk assessments in place, and they do their own risk assessments, assuming that we can do it better than the organizational risk assessment. So I would seriously urge all those internal auditors, basically say that, you can have your own assessments, but I would say the organizational risk assessment needs to be considered as a top priority, like because that's organizational, that's against the objectives, rather than just forming or framing a list of risk within a department and practicing it, right? And so what else would you like to tell us in terms of the contribution of risk management or risk practice towards a great governance or a good governance? What's your thoughts?
Glad you mentioned the auditing and the audit report, because you find that we get the internal auditing that are not considering the risk management process. The risk management process is currently overshadowed by the audit process, because the audit process is business processes and best practice requires that risk management be at the forefront of decision making within an organization. And the audit and internal and external audit are there to make sure that the process is being followed. They are there for assurance purposes, not to do our actual internal risk management and risk assessment practice. We need to have our risk analysts doing our risk assessment, and we have our internal auditors doing process assurance, assuring that the risk analysts are following the processes that need to be followed. So currently, we have a risk manager, but the risk manager is guided by nothing. It's just there sitting and doing things as they are, but he has no guidance to say, this is the process, this is the policy that we need to follow. It's just there as a risk manager using the information that he has.
Yeah, I think as long as the risk manager stops making the list management and have the proper authorities to communicate to the top management and the board of directors with communicating the top risks within an organization, the governance starts from there. Is there anything else you would like to go through before we wind up, or and we have one more poll question coming in, but I'll post that if you have more to follow.
I'm glad that you did mention that risk management is a leadership competence. If risk management was to be taken serious, it should be the example should be set from the top. If I say to you, Mohammed, at the moment, you are the leader and a chairperson of Excelledia Ventures, and I need to implement the risk management process or risk management framework within Excelledia. I cannot be going to talk to someone who is not at a senior role. Enterprise risk management is a leadership competency that requires leadership to take decisions. So if we take it from the leadership and we filter it down, everyone within an organization and everyone within government will be compelled to follow what the leaders are doing.
I think that's exciting, Lebo. So with that, I think we have given enough for the audience. And, so I would say that one more thing, we would be very happy, the further slides would talk about, we would be very happy to come and explore your risk management process and understand and help you. And, in terms of positioning it better, in terms of having the right risk insights, helping you to establish the dashboard, digitizing it. But before that, before we move on to the questions, I would like to have a question and answer session. I would like to pose another question. Jitin, can you please push the last question, please?
Of course, yeah.
And when you talk about internal controls, you can always measure the controls, measure the efficiency of the controls at all levels of the organizations. And like Lebo said, if it is overshadowed by the audit process, it's very, very difficult, right? But risk has to come out of the shadows of audit, and basically it should be able to. Audit is a process to check that are we doing it or not, but risk is a problem. If it is a high risk, it can kill the business, right? Yeah. The question is, would you like to digitize your risk management process to save time and money? So if somebody comes and tells you that, this would save 55% of your payroll if you have a risk management process in place, or if you have an enterprise risk management in place. So would you like to go for that? Or you say that, okay, hey, wait, let me have a look at what you're talking about, right? Okay, I would like to explore it, or you have made up your mind. So what's your thoughts? The voting is happening slowly, so like it's almost at the end of the session. So please keep your questions ready if you have any questions in terms of clarifications or anything of that sort. And if you have more questions, you can always shoot them to our email, but we're just waiting for the results of the last question. So yeah, that's really good. So I would probably say that we would like to help you to explore the 70% of the audience who feels that they need a system to save on money. So we're very happy to explore, or we're happy to help you explore that process. And let's say 10% feels that, okay, we don't need to have one, probably they have one. Or 20% feels that, 20% of people feels that, okay, hey, I'm not really sure, let me have a look at it, is it really going to save my time and money? So that's all what it says. So Lebo, so before we move on to the questions, would you like to have any statements to conclude the presentation before we move on to the questions?
Moment, I'm happy that we had this conversation, and I'm glad that people attended.
Okay, that's brilliant. So if you have any questions, and Jitin, if you can share the email IDs. Okay, so we can. So there is a question which says, which is the best software to manage risk management now in the market? That's a very difficult question, depending on what context are you looking at, in terms of your budget, in terms of your size of the organization, and the kind of objectives you want to. But I would say, we have designed a software called ISO Robot, which is very specifically, would help you to address risk management at all levels of the organization. We would be able to showcase a demo if that is interesting and exciting for you. And, the people who said we would like to see a demo, and the people who said, all the delegates who said we would like to explore a risk management system in terms of addressing, in terms of saving more money and time, we would be very happy. We would be very happy to explore that. So I don't know the name of the person who asked this question. So it would be great to show you in terms of how this would help. And we believe that, okay, this is one of the best system in the world. So because this has been used by some of the largest organizations in the world. But rather than telling this is really good, best, and everything else, I would seriously request you to have a look at the system, and so you can reach us, and probably we can explore that. And anybody who's interested in looking at a detailed look at a system after the demo, we can also offer you a proof of concept, because it's very easy to say that this can do magics, but unless until you see that happening, so you don't have to even look at thinking on commercially. Jitin, are we sharing any email IDs? Is there a place where we have any email IDs for the participants to reach us, or is there a common email ID?
Can reach us at connect@excelledia.com.
Can you put that on the chat? If
Yeah.
Or you can reach Lebo itself. In the beginning, we had shared the email IDs. Yeah. So either of us, it's fine. So you can reach us. Are there any other questions? I can see. Any further questions? I think I've asked you 3 questions and you have answered it really well. So it's my duty to answer your questions as well, or our duty to answer yours as well. Right. So, and yeah, so you can see Lebo's email address as well. So you can reach either of us. That's fine. So yeah. Lebo would be closer to you, so that's more convenient. Okay, how AI can improve the ERM process? That's a very exciting question, because recently I've done a webinar on how AI can improve internal audit, and risk management was one of the core element of one of the areas where risk management is really getting excited. Is we used to have the data analyzed of what happened, which was historic data. Now we started analyzing what is happening, which is the current data, or which is the real-time data. Now, what is happening with the likes of AI? One of the core elements of AI is machine learning, which is talking about advanced analytics. What it can do is that, looking at what happened and what is happening, it can actually let you know that, okay, what is likely to happen, which is your predictive risk assessment or predictive risk analysis. So it is more of your historic data. If you have got a strong historic data, and if you have got strong insights on your political, or if you're on your pestle side of the business, so it would also can, help you to predict. And other than prediction, if it can also help you to prescribe, it can also help you to, prescribe or prescriptive analytics. Basically, the control measures can be recommended. So when I say recommended, the best way to explain a recommendation engine, when you all open Netflix, it tells you, watch this movie, watch this movie, watch this movie. That's the strongest recommendation engine you can see on the internet, and one of the sharpest recommendation engine. So what it can do is that, it can actually tell you, if this risk is likely to happen, these are the suggested recommendation, right? Another area where risk can really help is called the proactive control monitoring. So let's say I'll give you an example. So if one of the when you're hiring people, the system says, the system or the processor says that, okay, you need to do a background verification. A simple way of doing a background verification of the 100 people recruited in a month would be, assessed by an auditor only when he chooses those people inside the samples. Otherwise, they may not be assessed. But if you have a proactive system which can even tick a box saying that, okay, the background verification is done, and if you have that historic data available, and the more the data you have, you can actually set up your proactive control monitoring at different levels of the organization. So it is more like having a surveillance camera or a CCTV camera on, rather than just waiting for a reactive approach of having an audit done and finding some finding some problems. So it's more proactive. You're very well aware of what is likely to happen, which is one reason ISO has actually taken off the preventive action side of the business, and they have actually said the risk management would actually address the whole process in detail. What are the best recommended frameworks for risk management in Africa? Lebo, it's for you, like it's your region. So I would add a bit more once you complete, based on whatever little I know, but I'll leave it to you to answer the question, please.
At the moment, Farouk, we will focus on COSO framework. We're focusing most on COSO framework. ISO 31000 is a standard that's still new to the people, it's still new to the business and to the industry. So currently in Africa, I know for sure that we're focusing on the COSO framework. However, in the financial industry, they're focusing on Solvency 2. The risk management framework is they're using Solvency 2 for banking sector and the insurance sector.
Yeah, I think, so for me also, COSO is my hot favorite in terms of the risk management framework. And it is not just a risk management framework. I don't know why they're calling it as a risk management framework. I would say it's more like a business management framework. It has everything, right? So it talks about your entire business in general. If you have to put some products and service in front of every single thing explained in a COSO, if you have to just add a product and service on top of it, I think it's a wonderful business management system. And I would also say that, when you're choosing a risk management framework, also consider the level of the legal and regulatory compliance required at a national level, at a regional level, also at an international level. So also look at the information security requirements as well. So see, the regulations are actually growing every day. So so now you're talking about ESG, like ESG can help you to polish your COSO framework to the next level. So you may have plenty of frameworks. So rather than chasing the frameworks and the certifications behind them, I would say take the best out of these frameworks, which is really adaptable for your culture, your competence, your leadership, and against your organizational objectives. So rather than trying to cut your leg based on your shoe size, and I think I would strongly suggest you to fit into your culture and try to choose what is really exciting for you to achieve your organizational goals, considering the best as well. Any other questions? Very, very exciting questions, I would say, very specific and very sharp. Any more questions, please? I think, yeah. So we are at the session is exactly 1 hour right now. We started 2 minutes late, so we have finished everything in 58 minutes. So I would say, so you have you can see that it says that, okay, you can always visit isorobot.io to see different offerings in terms of enterprise risk management, internal audit, governance, risk and compliance. I don't want to do the selling here, but just for you to know as an information piece. But I would like to say, Libo, thank you very much for this wonderful and informative session. A lot of learning for me as well as for all of us in the room. And I hope I've not bored all of you by talking a lot. So thank you very much. And so looking forward to okay, there is another question. What do you suggest, qualitative or quantitative risk assessment? So that's an interesting question. So Lebo, would you like to go for that? And I would like to add a bit on top of that once you finish.
What do you suggest, qualitative or quantitative risk assessment? I'd suggest
Yeah.
both, because we cannot quantify something we have not qualified. I'd suggest both. We qualify something before we quantify it. So I
Yeah.
qualify something and I put numbers behind it. I'll always go for both methods.
I think it's important to have both of them and make sure that both of them connected and not having them isolated. So if you know that, okay, if there is a possible uncertainties, so what does it if you can quantify that, and please don't try to quantify everything. You can't quantify everything, right? Whatever can be. So when I say, like when Lebo says both, whatever can be quantified, and when it quantifies, it makes sense. Please don't make quantification of risk for the sake of completing a KPI or KRIs, right? So you have a key risk indicator, you have a key performance indicator, and you want to showcase it to the management. And if it is not making any sense for the business, please don't do that. So if you really can quantify them, and if it is adding value, and if it has some financial impact, you can always take them. If it has reputational impact, you can take them. If it has regulatory impact, you should take it, or you must take it, because it may come up with, if it is reputational, you may get blacklisted. If it is financial, you may end up paying a lot of fines. And if it is regulatory, I don't know what's going to happen to you. So that's completely difficult, right? So what I would say is that qualitative is really important, but at the same time, it has to be quantified wherever possible. But at the same time, if it makes sense for your business, don't just quantify it for the sake of quantifying it. Lebo, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Farouk. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. So major challenges in effective risk management process in an organization. Lebo, you live with that day in, day out. What's your thoughts?
Bigger challenges in effective risk management processes in an organization. The challenge that we're facing in our organizations is we're failing to monitor and review our processes. We can do identification, we can do the assessment and the analysis, we can respond, but we're failing to monitor our recommendations and implementation processes. That's where we're failing. But then, as for any other thing, I'm happy with the way the continent is taking on risk management. There's growth and there's still room for improvement.
I would like to add one more thing, Lebo, is one of the biggest challenges for any effective risk management process is the incompetence of the risk management department or risk management function to convince the top management about the importance of the risk. So that is one of the major challenges, because I would always hear the risk managers or the enterprise risk management says that, okay, management is not giving attention, management is not giving money. If I can't convince my management about what I'm doing in my organization, I would better leave the organization rather than trying to convince the organization, because I'm not fit for that job, basically, right? It's a very powerful statement, but I'm sorry about it. It's because it's important that, if I'm trying to represent something within a business, and if I'm not able to convince my management about the importance of that specific area and the impact of that specific area, that's one important thing. And the second thing is that, for the risk manager to communicate this message, looking at the competence and the maturity and the culture of the organization. Because if it's a tech savvy organization, he may need to communicate it that way. If it's a traditional business, and he may need to communicate it that way. But leadership has to also play a vital role, even though it's communicated really well. So another challenge is another challenge is not connecting the risk to organizational objective, and not able to quantify what are the financial benefits, or what are the brand benefits, or what are the products and service benefits. And risk can be implemented in two ways. One is more like using the stick, which is more like an enforced mode, and the other is more like an easy way where you do it more of a playful manner. So it can be a mix of both as well. But the challenges is the way you're communicating it. But if you can take off the terms and terminologies into a common man's language without using the jargons, your first step is up. You're already there. And if you cannot make them afraid of telling them that, all the close numbers, 4.1, 3.1, 1.7, that's the next step. Please try to avoid these jargons. Please try to avoid the terms and terminologies, just to showcase your knowledge to your top management. So try to tell them in common man's language. This comes in, you end up paying X amount of money, they get hit, they understand the pain, right? So after the audit, tell them that, you're going to have $100,000 fine coming up. Don't tell them that, you have a non-conformity, right? So that should be your language. So I would say there are a lot of things, but the first step has to be identifying the processes and, having the right controls. And, if you don't have a process portfolio, and if that is not connected with the risk management, that's going to be very, very difficult. So that would be the first step, right? Yeah. So these are some of the major challenges, and there are plenty more, so we can always talk about it for another hour, but, I would like to stop there. So is there any other questions? So, yeah. So for me, it's 2 o'clock, 2:07. I don't know what's your time, wherever you are based. Yeah. So because I told you I'm in Qatar. Yeah. So, if you don't have any further questions, we can wait till we see you next time. And we're very happy to, conduct further sessions on, quantitative and qualitative risk assessment, or, risk treatments, what methodologies, very specific in detail. So we can always talk about it, the frameworks and the best practices and methodologies. And yeah, so, and if CEOs are listening, and if they want to really see how is it going to help us make more money, or more customers, we can talk on those lines as well. So that ends the whole presentation from our side. So Lebo, thank you very much. So it's been a real insightful session, and thank you everyone for joining the session. And so we would like to see and hear more from you soon. So that's it from our side. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lebo.
Thank you very much, Farooq. I appreciate it.